what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Gerald here with your weather forecast. Hope everyone's having a great start to their week. It's been a beautiful Monday here in Charlotte. Very spring-like weather. Much nicer than it was this weekend for sure, with very cold, rainy temperatures. But again, much nicer weather now, and that is unfortunately, though, going to lead to some severe weather this week for a lot of us, as we often see when we have this super nice weather during the wintertime. That usually spells trouble for us here in the South, and we're definitely going to pay for it going into the middle part of this week. But before we get too far into today's video, I do want to say sorry for not having a video out over the weekend. Unfortunately, I was back home, and I was having some internet problems I just could not figure out. So luckily, though, we're back in Charlotte, where we have nice functioning internet that I will definitely take advantage of. Also want to say sorry if last week's video schedule might have been a little off, or if maybe I seemed a little off in the videos, or if they just weren't quite up to the quality of content that I normally like to put out. I was just having a bit of a rough week, to be honest with you, but luckily that week is over. We're on to a new week, and you know, that's part of life. Sometimes you have a good week, sometimes you have a really bad week. And honestly, sometimes the bad weeks are the best for you because you learn the most from them, you gain the most strength, you gain the most perseverance, and that's something I'm always after. So I'll thank God for having a bad week and just be happy I made it through it, and now we are on to much nicer horizons. So hoping we have a good week this week. I think we will, and no better way to start it than here talking to you guys about the weather. So let's go ahead and get into it because, you know, I'm busy, you're all busy, and I don't want to waste too much of your time. So starting off looking at radar here, we have really nice weather in the east. By that I mean not really anything going on radar. A little bit different here in the southwest, where we do have low pressure setting up shop here in Arizona, and that's going to start some storming weather as well as some snowy weather for some of us to start the week before the second piece of energy that's up here into the Pacific Northwest eventually dives down and creates a lot more problems for us, including some severe weather. So far, the week has started out very nice for us across the east. We have very nice spring-like temperatures here across the east, especially into the south, with temperatures ranging from the 60s up through the 70s. And then, you know, more, I guess, kind of cooler than that the further north you go, obviously, but still nice weather for February standards. Looking at satellite, you can see this low pressure spinning down here into the southwest, and that is going to, like I said, create some rain and storminess as well as snow for some of us, and we're going to talk about that. And then this is that second piece of energy up here into the Pacific Northwest that is going to dive down and create even bigger problems, I think, for those of us in the east going into the middle part of this week. So as you can tell by looking at those hazards out there, all of this unsettled weather is kind of confined to the west right now, where we don't really have much going on east of the Mississippi here. But, of course, weather here in the United States likes to move from the west to the east, and that's the same thing that's going to happen this week. All of this craziness and nonsense is going to move east going into the middle part of the week, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, first map I'm going to show you here kind of just shows energy in the atmosphere, and I think this is good because it can kind of help show the different systems we're going to be working with this week. So starting out, this is that one storm in the Pacific, or out towards the Pacific into the southwestern United States. This is going to move up, go pretty far north really into the plains, and then we're going to get that next system to move in. So let me go ahead and time this out for you. You can see that first system here, that kind of bowling ball shape here in the middle of the country, that is going to continue to get going. That's going to then move up through or to the north and the west through the plains. And that will cause some problems, but then the bigger system will be the second one. And look at this one. This one's really going to get ramped up here, and this is what's going to cause some of that severe weather for us in the middle of the week as that moves east and then brings much cooler, nicer temperatures behind it going into this weekend. So to show this to you in a bit more of a conventional method, looking at future radar here, you see we have pretty nice weather even going into tomorrow before eventually tomorrow afternoon. This system really gets going here into the central plains, and with it some rainy, stormy conditions on the east. But by the time that we get into tomorrow night, it's going to kind of phase with another piece of energy up here to the north, and that's going to help to create some snow into the northern plains. Although I don't expect anything crazy, especially to be in the northern plains for February standards. Definitely some snow chances with that one. But I would be much more concerned with this second system. And look at this one. This one going into Thursday, I think it's definitely going to cause a lot of problems, really starting Wednesday here into the southern plains, and then Thursday going to have a big swath of severe weather likely as this thing really ramps up, taps into that Gulf moisture, mixes that with this changing of wind and that wind speed. And whenever that warm and cold air clash, as we know, that's when we get problems. And sure enough, that's what we're going to see on Thursday afternoon here across, really honestly, from the Gulf Coast up through the Great Lakes before this eventually moves through the country. And by the time we get into Friday afternoon and into this weekend especially, much nicer, clearer, drier, colder weather throughout the eastern half of the country. So how much snow are we talking about? Well, this kind of section up here, snow is that first system going into Tuesday. Not a whole lot, but enough to talk about. 3 to 5 inches I think will be pretty likely through sections of the Dakotas up through northern Minnesota. And then that second system is this swath of snow here that expands from the Rockies up through Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, down here into Wisconsin, Chicago, and then up through northern Michigan. Again, I think 3 to 5 inches is a pretty safe bet, maybe more out here into sections of western Kansas, eastern Colorado, and then, of course, definitely you're going to be counting snow in feet the higher up you go in elevation out into the Rockies. So that's the snow side of this. Looking at the rain, definitely going to see some rain here in the southeastern Ohio River Valley, which we have seen plenty of, I can promise you that. Whenever I was back home this weekend, my yard was just complete slush, complete mud. Definitely needed boots to traverse it, and I'm lucky enough to have four-wheel drive, so parking in the mud wasn't too big of a deal for me, but a lot of problems with all this rain we've seen in the southeast. Unfortunately, we get more of it this week for sure. So looking at the kind of more important part of all this, that's severe weather. Starting out Wednesday, we're going to see this first batch. And this is going to stretch really, I think, from Dallas through Little Rock here, up through Memphis, up towards sections even of Kentucky, Missouri, southern Illinois, and then back towards Jackson, Mississippi here, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and then even down closer towards the Houston area, seeing some of that severe weather. Then as we get into Thursday here, this is really quite the map to see in February, I'll tell you. Seeing the severe weather threat from Cleveland, Ohio, all the way down to Biloxi, Mississippi, back towards Atlanta, Nashville, Louisville. This is something you don't see very often, especially in February, to see 4 days out this entire area under the gun. So a very volatile system we're dealing with here, and we do still have a lot of question marks with it being 4 days out, but what I can promise you is we're going to have some kind of severe weather somewhere here going into Wednesday and especially Thursday. So another way to show that to you here is looking at that lightning density or where those thunderstorms are. So pretty quiet in terms of thunderstorms with that first system, but once we get that second system going Wednesday into Thursday, look at these thunderstorms begin to blossom up here from Texas all the way over towards sections of traditional Dixie Alley from Memphis down to Jackson, Mississippi, and that continues eastbound going into Thursday afternoon. And then even Friday, those storms working their way into the Carolinas potentially before we finally clear out going into this weekend with much nicer winter-like weather, although kind of throughout the east. So to show you those temperatures and why we're going to have some of the severe weather as well, you can see going into the first half this week, we have these warm, above average February conditions, these spring-like conditions here, and I'll draw this in a different color so you can see it, throughout the east. And then that continues before eventually you see into Wednesday, look at this surge of cold air right into here, into sections of the south central plains. This is going to help to bring up that warm Gulf air as we get low pressure to form. And then once you get that cold air to go in on the backside, you can see where these winds are going to clash, and with that in different directions, that's going to spin, and when that taps into this warm Gulf air, you are going to get rotating thunderstorms pretty likely through a big section of the southeast. Luckily, though, as that pushes on through and we push out those spring-like temperatures, that severe weather threat comes down with that colder weather, of course, going into this weekend. And again, it's going to feel much more like February, although luckily it will be clear. So if you have plans this weekend in the east, it looks pretty good, although definitely colder. So that's kind of the main idea this week. Again, just to summarize, warm temperatures to start the week, rounds of rain, and rounds of severe storms with spring-like conditions before ending this week with much colder weather and clearer, drier weather going into this weekend. So an active start to February, and hopefully it doesn't ruin too many people's Valentine's Day plans. So if you got plans, I think Tuesday looks pretty good. So go ahead and get out there and enjoy that before I think more of the severe weather moves into the middle part of the week. But that's all I've got for today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. This week looks a lot lighter on my schedule, so I should be able to get back to you relatively quickly. And then other than that, you can find me on Twitter and all kinds of social media. So hope you all have a great rest of your night, and I will see you all tomorrow for Valentine's Day.